let's get started. First of all, thank you everyone for joining the session. So our session today is the power of technical writing fueling career growth in data and engineering. This is a session that's co-hosted by both Data Engineer Things and Seattle Data Guy. And today it's my honor to have Benjamin, Shivananda, and Edward here to be our panel discussion guest speakers. So before we get started to talk about their personal journey with technical writing, so Ben, Shivananda, and Edward, do you want to give a self-introduction to everybody so we can get to know you?
Yep, sure. I can give a start. Hey everyone, my name is Ben Rojan, aka the Seattle Data Guy. Just a quick background on me. I've been data engineering for about 10 years. Used to work at Facebook. Now I focus on consulting, and I think I've been writing on Medium since around 2017. But yeah, on top of being a data engineer, I do a lot of content creation, as probably everyone else here. So yeah, that's me.
Yep, I can go next. Hi guys, I'm Shivananda. I've been a data engineer for almost 3.5 years now. Currently, I'm also a master's student at Texas A&M University. I've started writing on Medium since last year, and it's been a great journey. And I'm excited to share about my journey here.
Yeah, and then I can go last. Hi everyone, I'm Edward. I've been working in IT consulting for 6 years now and started in like general business analysis, then went into data, first in data science, machine learning, and eventually I ended up in data engineering, which I like the most. And I've been writing on Medium since the beginning of this year. Yeah, and I look forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Well, hey everyone, it's my turn. So my name is Sharon Weibel, and I'm currently a senior data engineer at Netflix. And I'm also the founder of Data Engineer Things. So we're both a Slack community and also a publication on Medium where we have writers share their experience and insights about data engineering. And I will be your host for this panel discussion. So, okay, all right. So first of all, I think it will be really fascinating for everybody to learn about how all of our speakers get started on their first blog. So, okay, who want to go first? Maybe I'll ask Shivananda first because we both once work at Target together, and somehow we work at the same exact data engineering team. What a small world. So, okay, so tell us about what motivated you to start blogging at first, and what was that first blog you ever wrote?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Indran. Yeah. My main motivation, I really felt like sharing my knowledge through writing. So in technical world, sharing my knowledge is a crucial aspect. Even in companies, when you work, you can only grow through collaboration and sharing your knowledge. So that was my main motivation to start with the writing. And then there are some personal motivations as well. So I wanted to gain visibility into the and build my personal brand. And as you all know, this is a digital world, and through blogging, you can position yourself as a leader in your area. So that was my motivation as well, and this helps you establish credibility as well. So people get to believe you a lot, and you have authority over your thoughts and ideas. So these are the main motivations that I started writing. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So Edward, I remember the first blog I wrote from you is about data consulting. And then you also wrote a lot of blogs about optimizing Spark and Databricks later. Yeah. So I'm curious, what motivated you to start blogging in the beginning, and what was your first blog?
Yeah. So same as Shivananda, I had like two types of reasons. The first one was also from a personal brand perspective, but also career-wise. But then also, like, I started writing those technical articles you mentioned because I was a bit frustrated because I could find the information in like scattered around in like 10 different blog posts, and I was missing like one comprehensive article with actual real examples. And this is like when I like started with the idea of just gathering this for myself, and eventually it turned into like a pretty long blog post. And that was the first one. But yeah, I also think it's so important to like share this because we constantly work every day with new and interesting topics, and we have our own personal take, which is not yet out there. So that was my main motivation.
That's excellent. I can totally resonate with that. There's always feels like there's not enough learning resource about data engineering. And you found that when you're doing your own research, you realize you cannot find it and you solve the problem yourself. Why not write about it so other people can learn about that too?
Yeah,
All right. Yeah. Last but not least, Ben, tell us about your first blog.
Sure, but like how far back? Because if we're talking about the very first blog, I actually started originally blogging when I got my first job in the tech world, but it was actually a food blog because before I worked in the tech world, I actually worked in fine dining for like 5 years between 16 and 21. And I wanted to keep a little bit of that. Like I was like, I don't want to lose this part of me. So I started writing on that, like wrote about like the first time I did a pop-up restaurant and a few other topics. And that was really the reason. The first time I wrote, like technically, it's because I started a consulting company and I wanted to kind of share some ideas on what I was learning and kind of what I was doing, and also just start getting people to know me in the data space as someone that kind of knows, what I'm talking about. So that's the more technical side.
I'm curious. Let's say if we skip the blog about food, what was the first data blog you wrote about? What was the topic of it, if you still remember it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It could have been. It was probably something like all the basic statistics every data scientist should know, and it had a list of things that you should know or something like that. Yeah,
that's a great topic. For me personally, my first blog, if I remember right, was a blog that compares Avro, Parquet, and ORC. And I was doing it because I learned all those things from Apache Hadoop, the definitive guide. And I was doing a lot of research when I was in school, and I found it really fascinating. So I just summarized anything, just shared it as a note. It wasn't a very long blog. It was like 2 minutes, but I still get a lot of people reading it these days. It was back 5 years ago. It's crazy. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your story about how you get started in first blog.
Yeah,
sure, go ahead.
I forgot to mention about my first blog. So actually, I did not start with data engineering. So my first blog was on self-management. So I read an article and it helps you summarize what you need to do to be a successful tech professional that spans over 30 to 40 years. So that was my first blog actually. I wrote it last year. But coming to data engineering, I think my first blog was about some SQL concept. So I was preparing for interviews and also, so I thought some complex knowledge will be really helpful.
That's really cool. Well, some of us started writing even without getting started with data first. Nice. So I know all of you already built pretty big portfolio of a lot of different blogs that you wrote about. I'm curious, what is the one blog that you are most proud of?
I think that's always such a tricky question, but I think like the one I'm most proud of, it's related to data engineering, but it's not necessarily technical. It's like the data engineering onboarding survey, which I ran because I thought it's such an important and actually interesting topic, and I would be interested to see how the community that we also created perceives this topic. So in the end, I think it also turned out quite cool. And it was really nice because we could get the insights from the community, because like that's something that's not so easily replicable, let's say, I think. And I think also the response was quite nice, and it's also would be possible to build up on that in the future. And I think
excellent.
I can go next. So for me, the blog that I am most proud of is where I talked about data governance. So this is a very least discussed topic in data engineering, I would say. So, but data engineers have a big role to play in that data governance, and it is an important aspect of data strategy in organizations. So this data governance include various aspects such as data quality, security, lineage, and all. And data engineers have a very big role in enabling this for an organization. So I added a lot of content from my personal experience as well, like from my 3 years of experience, whatever I've done these aspects. data security, quality, and all. So whatever personal knowledge I had, I uh, wrote it in that article and got a very good feedback. So I think that is my most read article as well.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I think for me, like at least one of the favorite articles I've written recently, it was one I did with the Pragmatic Engineer. I mean, the only one I've done with him, but and it was just honestly defining like what is data engineering and kind of going through the various concepts of data engineering. And it was just one, it was really long. I don't remember what it ended up being, but I remember it was very, very long, several thousand words. And two, he just like constantly kept coming back and be like, but can we add another personal example here? Can we make this even more, like personal? Which I think is like, if you've ever read his work, you're like, why is his so different? And then you start to kind of understand, like, oh, okay, like he really wants to make this. He doesn't want it just to be another what is this kind of blog. He wants this to feel very unique. And I'm like, okay, this is why his stuff feels very, very different compared to like everything else you might read, where it's a high level description of something. It's like he's really trying to tie it to the real world. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean, because I think there's like two types of blog. There's one type of blog is talk about very high level idea, and after you read it, it's still very abstract. And if you don't have kind of hands-on experience, you still don't get what that means. But then when you give examples and actually project ideas, you just help your readers understand this so much in depth and give them really the insights into the work, and then how that translates into some of the technical concepts. Yeah, for me personally, honestly, my the blog posts I'm proud of the most are those that when people, after they read it, they will send me a long email about how much they feel about it after they read it. One of the recent one that I wrote about was about my experience going through a coaching plan at the previous company. And that blog was published on Data Engineer Things, and I get so many message on LinkedIn and also comment and tell me like, they just feel so inspired, and they feel like they just got more courage to continue their career. To me, that is so much more special when you read that. You feel you feel like you make an impact in some other people's career paths. Yeah. So, yeah, cool. All right, so one thing about our title is that we're trying to tell everybody that, hey, you guys should all get into technical writing. And how are we going to convince them that technical writing is good for you, right? So I want to ask everybody, so after you start blogging, start getting into technical writing, how has writing helped your own career? And because we're all here, because that first of all, I know a lot of us are very passionate about it. And secondly, I know that technical writing has all elevated our career growth in some way. So I would love to hear more from everybody here.
Yeah. I think for me now, until now, like it has helped me like twofold. First of all, like also getting to know and meet a lot of really interesting people, which I also think that at some time in the future could definitely help, either with a job or a collaboration or anything like that. And then the second aspect would also be that when you're researching articles and they're going to be published, you really want to make sure that you really understand what you're writing about. So also from a technical perspective, you learn quite a lot, which you can then also apply in on your work. And I think in the future, I'm really convinced that many more doors are going to open because of putting yourself out there and contributing. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can really resonate with everything you said. So Ben, what's your take on that?
I'm going to guess it's somewhat similar to I think on one side you have the fact that you crystallize concepts even more so, right? Like there's a lot of things you learn in school and you maybe don't ever think about like why you think something or why you think a certain approach is good in certain contexts. And then writing forces you to do so, right? Especially if you've got a big audience, you're like constantly being like, am I right? Like, am I really right? Like, do I really believe genuinely in what I'm saying? Because I found that people will read like to the word sometimes, and you'll get someone commenting like, this is not exactly accurate. And you're like, okay, it's like off by a word. But so, understanding that like people do really read this, I think makes you think about things deeper. And then, yeah, I think the biggest thing is like you just open up so many opportunities that you wouldn't have expected. Whether it's hiring managers reaching out to you because they see you're passionate about a topic, and then they're like, we want you to work for our company. Whether for me it's like consulting clients who come in and they're like, hey, you wrote an article, it resonates with us with the problems we're facing right now. Like, can you come in and take a look? To like, someone who maybe is like on the investing side and they're like, hey, can you give us some advice on what we're doing in terms of like investing in certain solutions, because we're not really sure, how to view this marketplace in the data world. So I think there's a ton of opportunities that you just don't even know exist, but by writing, especially on a like public platform that gets disseminated to thousands of people, you just never know who's going to read that article and like what that could do for you. So I think that's kind of what I find.
Yeah. Talking about how it has helped my career, I would say it has helped me a lot in terms of reinforcing my knowledge. So I had already completed my being a data engineer for 3 years, but I hadn't started writing about it. So I was thinking, what have I even learned and all. So when I started thinking about it, so I contemplated a lot and wrote down all the things I've learned. And when I wrote about it through articles, now I have a clear picture of what I've learned through my experience. And now I feel more confident when someone asks me what you have done in your career. So, and it helps you build that recognition as well. So even recently when I completed my internship, so there also my team recognized my work on Medium. And so that helps you build that reputation in the corporate world as well. And as Ben and Edward mentioned, it opens up a lot of networking opportunities. The fact that I'm here today speaking, I think it's through blogging itself. So yeah, you never know, like you'll get a lot of collaboration opportunities when you start technical writing, and you get to meet a lot of new people. That is very exciting.
Yeah, totally. I can resonate pretty much everything with you guys said, and especially on the next network aspect, because I think traditionally we're thinking about network of going to meet up, make those one-to-one conversation, in-person connection. But like when you're writing or like you're speaking on event like this, you're making connections even when you are not knowing. At one point, somebody's going to reach out to you. It's like, oh, I know Edward or Shivananda or Ben already. I read your blog at one point. And that's one thing, just like networking, you are making an investment for your future. And then someday you're going to, get a job or get an opportunity because of that. And also one thing, it's a really good portfolio you're building, because I remember during interview, you really want to know, is this person really passionate about data engineering? Is this person really curious and want to solve hard problems? Is this person really driven? And if you don't know the person at all, like it's really hard to make that judgment just in maybe 1 or 2 hour interview. But however, if you see this person talking about all the interesting data engineering problem all the time, that's a really good signal from an employer perspective. I know this person cares a lot about his work, and then he'll do a good job. So that's one perspective. Like, yes, like it literally happened to me. There was at one point I went to an interview and the hiring manager is like, oh, I've been following on LinkedIn for a long time, your Medium blog. And that was like, okay, I'm like one toe in the door already.
Yeah, that is exactly true.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, cool. So one last question I want to ask about everybody. I know that a lot of people come into the session, maybe you're thinking about when to start blogging, if you should start blogging. And then we want to have all the experienced writer here to share a little bit about their advice for new writers. Let's say, what are the things that you wish you had known maybe earlier on when you just started writing? And let's say if you can give yourself some advice when you first start writing, what advice would you give?
For me, I feel it is very important to have patience when writing. So you got to write, revise, and rewrite a lot. So for me, it's basically personally for me, it starts with scribbling down the ideas and then noting down the talking points. And then when you have a proper outline, then you'll be able to write your first draft. And first draft is not enough, definitely. You'll have to revise and rewrite it until you have that well-polished article. So I think investing time is very important for me when writing articles. And secondly, I feel there are a lot of articles out there on the internet. People can search and go to the article, but what makes it valuable, our articles, is adding that personal touch. So when you add your thoughts and ideas from your own personal experience, that's what adds value to your articles. So I would say that is also very important for me.
So also for me, like one of the things, like it's kind of obvious, but like writing is a skill. So it's the thing is like it's also something that you actively have to work on. And I would say like simply reading articles is not going to be enough. You have to start writing and see how it reads like, and then, as Shivananda said, also like continuously adapt it. One thing that I've also noticed is like being clear and concise is actually also like, it's easy to like describe things in a very fancy way, whatever. But like, I think there's a lot of value that we can add to our readers if we're really like clear and concise and make it easily understandable and also easily readable. Like, for example, there was an article about varying, for example, sentence length and complexity, which I also found quite interesting. And and the last point would also to always have concrete examples, like either a personal touch or there are so many high-level articles out there, which I think like the concrete examples always add a lot of value.
I think, and like kind of feeding off that personal touch example, I think, one of the pieces of advice I'd give to people is like, don't feel like everything's been written because everything in a weird way has been. I think everyone has a personal kind of story or touch that they can add to their articles that other people can't. So I think everyone has something unique that they can write and have a unique way of approaching things. Just looking at different people's like blogs, you'll see that everyone has a style. Some people are very, very distinct. Some people are very kind of like, you're like, you can't tell the difference between one person or another. But just because you feel like something's been written a million times doesn't mean you can't write something that would honestly be even far more unique than what has been written and would attract either more people or just a specific niche of people. I think a lot of people feel like all the blogs have been written because people have been blogging since like, I don't know, like the 90s. But there's still so much that people want to read and would like to read like updated versions on. So
also like finding topics that can also be like a personal touch, or like combining different aspects of a problem. Like, okay, this has been covered, but this hasn't been covered in combination or like in a full length example.
Another aspect and a perspective I also want to add is that when I read blogs, I started to realize the authenticity of it really makes a big difference. That I just really like enjoying reading from authors who really relate like those common, maybe a technical concept I haven't discussed maybe 1,000 and million times. But when you add your personal experience, work experience, and with the problem itself, it makes a really big difference. And also another thing, it's just like as a general writing tips, I think one problem that myself and I see a lot of other new writers often get into is that they dive too deep into the problem without providing enough context for the audience. Because sometimes we're just like so deep in the topic that we're thinking about, we forget about what the context we know, but others not necessarily know. But just realizing that fact can be really powerful to make sure that you get more audience and they will be actually follow through your writing, understanding what's the point you're trying to convey.
And one last point I actually just remembered was like when writing and when starting out to write, it's like don't get too caught up in like trying to make the perfect formulation from the start. Like I also struggle with that sometimes, and like just writing it down and then revising is I think a better approach than just trying to get it perfect from the first time, because it just won't work. So just getting started with those first ideas and then revising is the way to go, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also one thing I think sometimes people think that I'm not a writer, I'm not even a native speaker, writing isn't for me. And sometimes I know that we can get nervous when we're writing our first thing, feels like maybe this is not good enough. But the thing is, you don't have to be a writer, or have English degree to be able to blog. And yes, maybe your first blog is not going to be your best one, but the more you write, the more you'll get better. And also you'll be able to find your own voice to track the audience that would really resonate with you as well.
Yeah.
One more important point. So it's not only important to write articles. I feel it's very important to publish as well. So I was very hesitant to publish my article. So I think Zinner only encouraged me to publish that. So I think that helped a lot. You fear about people judging you, but I think that doesn't matter in the technical world. So don't hesitate to share your articles online. I think that's a great tip.
Yeah. That reminds me of another point I actually want to recommend is that a lot of times when I have an idea, and then my first thought is that, is it worth talking about? Because sometimes like I have been dealing with one problem over and over again, and it feels like everybody must have already known this. And mostly 99% of the time is actually a really interesting topic. You always find people comment on it and saying, oh, I didn't know that before. That's very, very interesting. So don't get keeping yourself on type of topic that you can't talk about. Like, we always say like, hey, you don't have to invent the next generation of Kafka to be able to write a blog. Like a lot of interesting problems you deal with your day-to-day life could be very beneficial content for people in the community. Cool. Well, I know everybody just keep getting inspired by each other, and there's more and more tips coming up. So, at the end of this session, we want to open the stage up for Q&A, and we actually already have one question coming from David. So David is asking that any thoughts on piloting and advocating for open source software as approach to design data management platforms?
I'm assuming, David, you're probably dealing with like trying to get buy-in from stakeholders to work with open source software. What's nice about open source software is, one, it's open source. So generally, some companies at least will let you kind of at least spin things up, and there's in theory no cost in getting things started. So it can often give you the ability to do a quick MVP or POC. So if you can get something working, and then like, especially if you can show what it does, like pull in something, using Airflow and push it to superset or something and show the value of it quickly, I think that's generally the way that like gets business stakeholders involved and like engaged quickly.
Yeah, I want to add one point on top of that. Maybe like different from Ben's angle about like convincing stakeholder to actually adopt it, but more in the sense like if you're going to write to advocating for it.
Okay, that's true.
That's my thought. Maybe I don't know which one he's asking, but I want to comment on that. After we start running data engineer thing publication on Medium, there's a lot of people actually talk about open source frameworks. Not just for managing data management platform, but there's data orchestrator, data processing, a lot of different things. And honestly, one tricky thing, disagree with me if you guys feel that way, is that if it's a very popular open source software like Spark or Kafka, everybody can write about it. Honestly, no matter how they write about it, because they're so widely adopted, it's already seen as organic content by default. However, if it's something really new, like that's something like, the vendor itself, even if it's open source, they're trying to push for it. Whenever you're writing about it, no matter you're affiliated with someone else, get paid or not, you're at risk of seeing as a marketing. And Shivananda and Edward, since you guys are our editor, you have experience. Sometimes we'll see articles, from authors who's not affiliated, but sometimes like they are too passionate, and then they add a lot of TV commercial kind of styles, like, oh, blow your mind, or like this is the only thing you'll need, or this thing totally beat up Airflow, or whatever. So I think that's something I would recommend to be mindful whenever you're advocating for a new software or framework that's coming up, even if that's open source. You want to provide your objective opinion and maybe tone down that sales page tone a little bit, even though you are super excited about it. One advice we often give author is that, hey, if you're going to talk about one specific framework or tool, it's always good to talk about other alternatives and also what the common problem it's solving from a more objective perspective, instead of just really that focusing on what these tools offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
All right. Well, we are right on time. Honestly,
Yeah.
I was really worried we're going to run over. But, well, first of all, thank you everyone for attending. And thank you for Ben and Edward and Shivananda for being our speaker today. And if you guys have any question, please feel free to follow us and connect with us on LinkedIn. And, check out everybody's blogs to see if anything will be helpful for yourself. And if you ever want to write blogs about data or data engineering, please feel free to apply to get ready for data engineer things. And you'll likely talk to me or Edward or Shivananda if you submit an article. And definitely follow Benjamin, the Seattle data guy, both on Medium and LinkedIn and Substack and YouTube. I don't know if there's anything else I'm missing here, but he's everywhere and he has excellent content.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.